Our first question that we have here, it came in via text and it reads, what does it mean to worship God in spirit and in truth? And that person is referring to a verse that we find in John 4:24. So I think we should go and read that verse to be able to get some context. All right. And it reads, God is spirit and his worshipers must worship in the spirit and in truth. So, Dr. Brown, what can you tell us for this question?
Sure. I like this text because it shows the two sides of God. In the previous verse, it says that is the nature of God, and we ought to be like God. Sometimes we want people to be either or, but here God says we must have the spirit and we must have truth. Two things. We must have compassion and we must have the commandments. We must have the head and we must have the heart. We must have the law and we must have love. It is two sides of the coin. And once Jesus was confronted with someone in John chapter 8 and verse 11. And he had something to say that I think was very, very interesting there. He said to the woman who was caught in adultery, actually, and he said to her, neither do I condemn you. Go, he said, and sin no more. And so the neither do I condemn you was the love, was the grace. But when he said go and sin no more, it was the law or the commandments. Yeah. And in our Christian walk, I find that all of us are what I call two something. We're all two something. That's why marriage is so good, because our spouse balances us.
Yes.
And if you're single, the Bible still says it's not good for a person to be alone all by themselves. God has made us not all for marriage, but for companionship. Yeah. And that's why the church is good. Don't forsake the assembling of ourselves together. Other people round us. And so we ought not to be too strict with the law, but as well, we shouldn't say, well, it's just the way I feel. No, God has his standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we must obey God's standards and do it in a loving way.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Dr. Holland?
You know, I was going to simply say that the Bible there indicates worshiping in spirit and in truth. God's not bound by the same limitations that we are. And so we have this spirit and truth, and Jesus himself says, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. And so we worship in a way, as Dr. Brown has aptly pointed out, with this heart and the head, so to speak, where we understand God's not in the same space or limits that we have. So we have to have that heart and head to worship in a proper way.
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for those answers, definitely. And I think that's a practical way that we can also take this message and apply it to our lives.